I'm Mike Hanwald, field agronomist with Beck's Hybrids, and standing here in a bean field, and unfortunately we've been seeing a lot of these yellow beans out here across northern Ohio show up over the last week to 10 days or so, and a lot of the bean fields don't look all that great, unfortunately. And I think it traces back to some compounding stresses that we've had to this bean crop. And so I just want to point out some of the things I've been seeing, because just because you see the yellowing in the bean field, there could be several different causes. So first, to kind of give us a point of reference, I want to show this is a healthy bean plant we got from a well-drained area of the field. And you can look at those roots and look at the healthy root system and all those nodules that you see there. Those nodules are producing. We can take and break one, split one open, and you see the red color, that rust red color there. That means that it's producing nitrogen. And so this is what we want to be seeing in a soybean plant, but unfortunately a lot of our bean plants don't look that way. So the first thing that might be causing some of this yellowing is going to be herbicide injury. And while we might just be spraying Roundup or Liberty or Enlist across the field, which, you know, the beans are obviously tolerant to that depending on which trait package you're planting, so we wouldn't expect to see anything. However, the bean still has to metabolize that chemistry, still has to break it down and process it, and so we're seeing a little bit more of a response due to the other compounding stresses that we're seeing. And so if you take a look at this one, this is an example of some herbicide injury. I just pulled this from the end of the field where it was doubled up, and you're seeing some of those brown speckling and blotches on there. So that's an example of what you would look for if it's simply herbicide injury. However, not all the fields that are showing the yellow symptoms have been sprayed. And so what are we dealing with in that case? Well, the simpler thing is manganese deficiency. And so manganese deficiency is something we see almost every year here in Ohio. Anytime you have less than ideal conditions, the roots struggle to take enough manganese up, and so we start to see that yellowing, that interveinal chlorosis. So we have yellow in between the veins, but the veins stay green, but it only gets yellow. It doesn't progress any worse than that. And so that's something that can be fixed easily with a foliar feed that contains manganese. However, we are starting to see that seem to progress into much worse of a situation than just simple manganese deficiency. What starts out looking like manganese deficiency can get worse, and I think what we're seeing there is Fusarium Wilt, which is a disease that we normally don't deal with in Ohio, and it's a very unique disease. It requires a unique set of conditions for us to have that disease. And so that's what I'm holding here, some bean plants that I pulled a little bit earlier today from a different field. But you see here that the plants have an overall wilt to them. You look at those roots, and the roots have basically shut down. There's almost no nodules there. The ones that are there are not being productive at all. If you look at what's left of these leaves, you can see symptoms that look almost like sudden death syndrome, where you see that interveinal chlorosis, where it starts off yellow in between the veins, but then it turns to that brown color as it starts to die, and the leaves will also fall off. And so you notice that there's leaves missing here. Now, it can be just a few random plants throughout the field. It can also show up in some small patches. Usually it's in the wetter areas and in the areas that after we were dry for a while and we got heavy rains, where the water ponded for a little while, is where we tend to see the worst of this. Now, at first glance, it might look a lot like Phytophthora. Phytophthora is something we deal with fairly regularly here in Ohio, but yet upon further inspection, you'll find that it's not. So the way to tell the difference is when you look at the stem. So number one, the leaves are falling off. Phytophthora, the leaves will turn brown, but they'll stay attached to the plant longer. As we look at the stem, you'll see that the stem is green or purple all the way down. With Phytophthora, that stem will stay brown on the outside. Then if we break the stem open, you'll see that the inside of that stem, the center, the pith of that stem, is turning brown there as well, where Phytophthora, that will stay green or white in the center of the stem. And so this is what's leading me to think of Fusarium wilt as the cause of this disease. Also the conditions that we've had leading up to it. So having extreme drought conditions, so for about 3 weeks with no rain that most of northern Ohio experienced, followed by saturated wet conditions. And I know it comes as a surprise because we all thought that those rains were lifesavers for us in helping the crop take off and grow again. However, those rains came hard and fast in some areas, and that's where we tend to be seeing more of these issues. So as far as what to do about it, I guess that's the other frustrating part, is when it comes to a root and a stem rot like what Fusarium is, there's really not a great course of action. A fungicide isn't going to bring these beans back to life. While we still have to watch and see, I'm not convinced that every single plant infected with it is going to die. I think some of them with very severe infection, as you're seeing here, probably will. But I think some of the beans may be able to recover, but we're going to have to watch and see because it's a disease that we don't see very often here in Ohio. If you want to do anything, I guess my only recommendation would be if you're going to be going across the field, making a herbicide application where you have a definite need to go across the field, putting in a foliar feed that contains manganese, sulfur, and perhaps even fulvic acid. Those are three things that we've seen as consistent ingredients in the PFR proven foliar feeds that we've tested in PFR. And those nutrients are also known for helping to reduce stress in plants. So that might help it out, but I'm not ready to recommend a special application just for the purpose of putting that foliar feed on, because I think it's a pretty slim chance of a consistent payback in that situation. So would rather you just do it if you're gonna have another reason to go across the field. So we're going to continue to watch these fields and see how things develop over the next few weeks. I hope that if we can just get some moderate rainfalls, not excessive rainfalls, to keep sufficient soil moisture but not excessive, and really just get some oxygen. Time and oxygen are going to be the best thing to help these beans recover, and then we'll see what the rest of the growing season brings. So if you have any questions about these or any other agronomic topics, feel free to reach out to myself or your local Beck's representative, and we'd be happy to help.